Hey folks, this is Let Me Know How It Is, a podcast about all things geek. Today's subject is the graphic novel, aka the trade paperback. So sit back, relax, and listen to us discuss the effect it's had on storytelling and the comic book business. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. So, the main question for this is the graphic novel with its effect on creative and the marketplace. Has it helped or hurt the comics industry? So, I'm Zach Slater.
I'm Frank Melman.
I'm Tommy Smithereens.
I'm Clifton.
I definitely think it helps. Prime example of that is Watchmen. I think the trade really propelled that to other people, just having it as a book to read all at once as opposed to looking for individual issues, because in my collection, I still don't have 3, 4, 5, 8, and 9. But overall, if it wasn't for the book being a graphic novel format, or at least brought together in one trade, I don't think anybody would have praised the story so strongly, being that it's a condensed story. You know, there's a beginning and end. You know, look for anything else. It's completed and it's in a travel-ready format. Great for airplanes. So that's I think it definitely.
That's a good one to start with, because I forget that that's even issues.
Yes,
for me.
Yeah.
Like honestly, I don't think I could tell you what the 12 covers are.
Oh,
of them. I really don't.
Really?
So that's a good one to start with.
Yeah.
But.
The button with the blood.
I remember the one with the picture of the photograph on the sands of Mars.
Right. Yeah, him standing there. I remember that one.
There's also the smudge when they're in Veets
Yes.
hideout.
Yes.
There's also one with the Black Terror, the flag. I'm trying to think.
I'm not sure, because it means what, 12 or 13 issues.
It's 12.
Yeah, 12.
Yeah. So each one is a defining character on each of them. So that makes me remember which did what or what cover looked at what. But I mean,
One's got to be a Rorschach mask.
yeah,
I would think so. Yeah, one's a butterfly.
One's a
I
butterfly.
think it's the butterfly.
Mhm.
Or Rorschach.
The Rorschach thing.
Yeah, the blot. Yeah. I'm just thinking of the interview where he actually says, "Yeah, it's a pretty butterfly."
Right.
Yeah.
To the psychiatrist.
But that's the one of the trade paper that stands out with me the most, is how people are able to pick that up and praise it or talk about it distinctly. But a lot of people forget it was a limited series, like what Zach was saying earlier, that it almost makes people forget that it was a limited series monthly.
It is interesting because it's famously or infamously one of the first American comic book collections to never go out of print, which is the reason Alan Moore never got rights to it back, is because he was guaranteed rights when it went out of print, and it never went out of print.
DC never let it go.
Yeah, that's one bad side to it.
But it's one of those things where when I think about the first or the beginnings of the graphic novel proper, that's definitely one of them. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I didn't really think about that one. But the other one I really thought of was, for the longest time, was Dark Knight Returns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure. Those two are, seminal for DC, especially for that time right around 86, 87, whereas when those books came out, you had them in trade format. And like you said, it's good for airplanes, it's good for bookstores, it's good for, all those places that are non-traditional comic shops. You could definitely get those two books and still be reading comics, but not technically reading comics, because it's not like a floppy or a single issue as the way they originally came out. Even though Dark Knight didn't come out, it was the first square-bound books. I remember at the time was one of those I'd gotten to go to the comic book shop in my local hometown, and I probably got a stack of comic books about the size of an old phone book. Like literally the day before, it's probably spent like $20, $30 back when comics were 75 cents or $1. And then going to Walden Books the very next day in the mall, and they had a stack up at front on the register of Dark Knight Returns issue number 2. And begging my mom to buy me one more comic book, not realizing it was a $4.95 or $3.95 book, which was a lot.
Yeah, sure.
86?
At the time. It was a big commitment for one story. But again, it was a great story. And it was in a format that they hadn't really done before that. And now when you think about that, looking back, I mean, a single issue now is, $4.99.
So you read Dark Knight as it was happening, essentially. We need to talk sometime about whether or not, like, the fact that it was seminal hit you, like, right away. Or if it was one of those things after the fact. We don't have to do it this time.
No, we won't sidebar out. The only thing I'll tell you is, like I said, I picked up 2 and I read 2 before I read 1. So I read 2 and then went looking for issue 1, got it, and then read the rest of it as it came out.
That's the same thing when Ronin came out. I felt when it was on the shelves, I picked it up, and I didn't know it was like I was in the middle of the story, and then it became difficult to get the first or the initial copy, especially if it's a reprint.
Right.
Then that makes it even that much harder. So I'm definitely on the side of it benefiting the comic industry as far as.
But so Frank, you said two things that I think. So you said bookstores, you said travel. Well, Tommy, you said travel first,
Yeah,
but
I did.
Frank, you reiterated travel.
Right.
And so I'm thinking back to all the like 2001 documentaries about comic books that were getting made when they were all talking about like, issues are maybe going away. And now what you're going to see are trade paperbacks in bookstores and stuff like that. And now I'm thinking, I don't know, but I feel like even that's changed now. Like, I don't know how many comics are selling at bookstores anymore at this point. Right?
About roughly half of all American comic books.
And the travel thing to me is it's the one time where I actually like reading off of a tablet.
True.
I hate lugging.
We've talked about it before. How many times you've been on a plane and in the old days you'd fill a backpack full of like 6 or 8 trades, knowing full well that you would read 2 or 3 on the way there and 2 or 3 on the way back. Not to mention if you were in a place with a decent comic shop, you would go check it out and pick up 2 or 3 more trades.
Yeah.
I remember one of the last times I was in Austin, that I found one of these great comic shops that had basically a storefront where they had like regular comics that were out new and product, like Funko Pops and Marvel Legend figures and all that good stuff. And then they also had back issues in the front of the store, and then they had a gaming store. This was all like one shopping center. They had a gaming store, and then behind that, in a bigger, almost like warehouse type area. It was very low frill, but they had all of the stuff that they were blowing out. So everything back there was older stuff, like older trades and hardcovers that were like 50% off of everything.
Right.
So again, that's another situation where, this was years ago, but ever since then I've switched, I got a good tablet, and as much as we can talk about that at some point, the experience of reading an actual comic or an actual graphic novel versus tablet, but having to have everything on a tablet and be able to read it that way is so much easier than having to lug around.
Yeah.
Even though I still buy collections of books, graphic novels all the time or hardcovers all the time, it's still one of those things where if I'm going to travel, I'd much rather not lug around an extra.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like I'm the same way. I mean, if I'm at home, I'm definitely going to read paper, but yeah, if I'm on a plane, I want to carry as least amount of stuff as possible. And so, I mean, that's the one time where so trades take up roughly half of the marketplace
of monetary sales. So I found some 2018 figures in sales and saying that the American comic books and graphic novels in 2018 did about $1 billion in revenue. And so breaking that down, where that money came from, it was roughly 50% was comic shops between the issues and the collections. And it was actually not quite half. It was around 40% were bookstores. Around, I think, 6% were newsstands / others. And the lowest one, like around 5%, 4%, 5%, was digital. But that's in monetary, not in units sold. So you understand, like the bookstores that are make up 40% of that money are going to not be selling issues. They're going to be selling trades.
Is that brick and mortar, or is that online as well?
Online as well.
Okay. Because I think
book retailers.
Okay,
Amazon.
so yeah, so when you take in Amazon for sure, but I was always under the assumption that was going to be going down because like bookstores are not all that prevalent anymore.
Right,
you know what
right.
I mean? Like, Borders going out and Barnes and Noble's still there, but
Books A Million.
Yeah. There's certain ones, but not like before.
But even then, they're on the thing about them is that I find interesting is what versus like a comic shop is. I mean, the more savvy shops I've been in, like I've been in a lot of shops because I traveled for a while, where it was one of the things where every time I went to a shop, they always had, like I said, the model was the one like that with the place I went to in Austin where they had, they had new stuff, they had some product, some stuff that's just comic related or pop culture related, and then they would have an area that was just blowout. And I don't think enough shops do that sort of thing where they can basically still make, they're obviously, you're going to be paying more than they did for the wholesale by buying the book at 50%. They're not making what they could have made off it. But there were a lot of places that were just like, we need to get rid of it. We need the space. They're trying to maximize the amount of money for what they can get. And it was also single issues as well as graphic novels. It wasn't just one or the other. They had both spots for both types. And I thought that was interesting a lot. I mean, it was pretty. I'd say 8 out of 10 shops I went to was like that, where they were just like, nope, need to get rid of this. We need space. We need to make some kind of money to keep things going. So,
I mean, so for me, it's just better because I'm a trade reader and they're easier to store that way. Like they look better on a shelf than putting your single issues bagged in a backboard on a shelf or in a box. It's just, if I want to read a couple of pages of Long Halloween or whatever, I can find that easily, and, there was a period where I was certain almost that like every single story was going to be traded at some point. But there appears to be maybe a little bit of like I'm puzzled by DC's sort of like recent trend of sort of like soliciting some trades and then kind of like backing stuff off. I mean, like, this thing that we advertised for April, like that's not actually coming out and it's not been resolicited at all. So I don't quite know if there's like a shift in the market coming.
It's one of those things where it's interesting to say that because a lot of the like pages or stuff are, that I get some of my news on what's coming out. A lot of times people are really frustrated. They're like, well, I'll tell my local shop or whatever that I want to buy something when it's coming out, say in 3 months from the latest previews. And then 2 months in, DC announces, no, we're not doing that. Either there's not enough interest or I don't know whether or not, I'm not sure how it works just distribution wise or what they decide on what they end up making. But there's been a lot of that in the last year where they've announced stuff. They've even had like the mock up of the cover. And then when the time comes, they just like, nah, we're not doing it. We're not committing the money to it.
Yeah, there was one point where they did make a clear announcement that they were scaling back their collection initiative. And then a handful of things I can remember got canceled right off the bat then or just disappeared from the listings from the different shops that had them as up for pre-order. And then some others like have gradually happened since then, even recent ones. They'll solicit something 2 months ago and then a month later,
right?
Like a month before it's to come out, say like, nope, it's been unsolicited. And I don't know if they honestly just react to initial orders, like they get some sort of gauge of interest early on and then just say like, oh, like it doesn't meet our threshold.
Right.
And then just decide not to do it and figure it'll be just more profit for them on digital without having to worry about the actual production of a collection.
Well, that's the thing I can think of when I initially saw the news that they kept, soliciting stuff and then pulling back was the idea of, remember when we went to Darwin Cook's talk at the Smithsonian, and his idea
that retrospective.
And he was talking about the fact that eventually we're going to have we might go back to the idea of printed books or printed comics being luxury items as opposed to having much lower prices for just digital stuff. And I think I think it's it's a good business model, the idea that no, we don't really need to print this when we can make a lot more money off the material that we already have. We may have to pay someone to recolor it for whatever reason because a lot of those books they get they'll bring in someone to recolor issues that are old, but I'm sure it's a much lower cost to do that than to have someone, I don't know what, Laura Martin or someone who's not as good as she is.
We talked a bit about like customizable too, which I thought would be interesting if you had kind of like books
like print on demand,
like print on demand, but you could sort of like, so I think about the greatest Superman stories ever told, trades, like that sort of thing. But if you could assemble it like with your own, I like this issue, and I want everything sort of in one spot.
Kind of like your mixtape of.
Yeah, I would take advantage of that for sure.
Well, if you were able to like have your own let's just say a 3D printer, for make your own hardcovers. I think that'd be great. I mean, it'd be a really cool innovation for them to try and do. Just the idea that you could put together whatever you wanted and bind it, and then put your own trade dress on the front would be great. We've probably given away $1 million idea just now,
right?
But it's one of those.
One
things.
did exist for prose novels.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, like you would go through the catalog and what you could get and tell it to print it, and it would create you a book. That was a while back. It wasn't full color printing, so comics wasn't viable quite at that point for comic books. But
you commissioned John Cassidy to do the cover,
right? Exactly, right.
It was probably ahead of its time. That's probably what occurred concerning that. But what I would like, sorry to be off topic a bit, but I like the Last of Progression to be more animated as opposed to book format. Don't get me wrong. I understand what the trade on the topic entails, but it's just that idea of not getting the full story all the time. And what books or trades did was give us the full story right then and there.
Yeah.
Generally. That's how it played out, because nowadays you hear people say, I'll wait for the trade, for a particular story to end.
That's totally me. And I know that it drives some people crazy, but like the issues to me is is I'm testing the waters. I'll buy issue 1. I'll buy issue 2 because I think issue 2 is kind of a better gauge of what the book is going to be than issue 1.
Remember, Zach, we had a long time ago, we had a discussion. I see, in fact, yours is more along the lines, you rather binge than get the weekly, or, as far as shows go, correct? In a sense,
comics.
No, but in a sense, I'm just saying, if you have to explain it like in your comic format. And for me, I would, if I can get my hands on that story before it hit the publisher date, I was all for it.
Right.
Yeah, that's in a way of how I felt with. I just give me the story. Don't feed it to don't piecemeal it to me.
Don't need, not in drips and drabs. I want it all at once.
I want all at once. Yeah. And if I get behind the curtain,
sure,
and see the story, that's what I'm all for.
I mean, my thing with graphic novels was, it's one of those things where if I wanted to basically put someone on a book, that was the easiest way to do it, was to be like, here's the first 6 issues of this. Or if I was, going to loan someone out a book, rather than give them my issues, I would just be like, here's the, because a lot of times you buy something initially and like you said, I'm going to put it in a box and it's going to go in the basement or in the attic or wherever you keep your books. And I'm not really going to think about it for a while, but I may want to read that or revisit that story. And again, I think in the beginning, when graphic novels were first coming out, and you had that ability to just pull something off the shelf, since it was so much more accessible, that graphic novels were much more a better thing for the industry, because you could easily just, like you said, like Tommy was saying, you could just put a full story in someone's hands, like Year One as another example, like much like Dark Knight Returns, where it was like, here's 4 issues, it's Batman's origin, you don't really need more than that.
Yeah,
I don't have to read at that point 40 years of Batman or 50 years of Batman or however long.
No, not at all. Yeah, I think it helps with accessibility, like tenfold.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that they sort of collapsed a little bit under the weight of their own. Like, I think comics get a little too bogged down in trying to organize continuity for new readers.
Sure.
And I think that there's just a little bit of, if you're a new reader, I think that you're going to have to do some homework at some point.
Well,
and I think like you start numbering runs, and this is volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, volume 4, right? And then you do, and somebody else jumps on Green Lantern, and then that becomes a volume 1, volume 2. And I think that can get confusing to new readers.
Well, we've had that discussion before. You and I have talked about the fact that, once upon a time in the old days, you had, and I always throw this back to, you had an editor's note and maybe a panel to describe a story that's being referenced before. Right.
Yeah. And
you were lucky if you had, an uncle who read comics when he was younger, or, a next door neighbor that read comics, and that was it. Until local shops started becoming a thing, you couldn't just roll into a place, pick up the back issue, and roll back out. And again, in some cases, you couldn't do that because they cost too much. But with the onset of the internet, there's no reason why you have to cater to new readers quite so much. I've never thought that. Just because I can pick up my phone, I can go home and go online on my laptop or my desktop, if you still have a desktop, and find out the entirety of the history of any character, for the most part, that's ever been written, especially from the big 2 or Image. You should be able to find those people's, any of those characters' histories. That's not, or what they've done before, but you decide to pick up your first issue. And I know in Marvel in the 90s, when they added the front page or the frontage page after the cover, where it was like, here's everything that's gone on, in the book up until now, basically,
right,
to get you caught up with the story. And I'm like, well, you have the internet. Yeah. Why is this something?
Wikipedia,
right? Why do you need this?
I'm not against them doing it at all. I mean, I do think it helps, but it's one of those things where I feel like manga has kind of like an easier time when it comes to that, because there's one Pluto, and there's not like another volume of Pluto out there. So like that volume 1 precedes this volume 2, and then there's nothing else. But like, if we look at a character that's super prolific, like Batman or Superman, like that can get a little confusing, I think. But
I was going to say, when you mentioned manga does the same thing. They're just ahead of the curve. The trades, they the formatted books that come in, even though they're serialized, they first come in a magazine edition of the story itself, like a comic. Imagine like getting a magazine with Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, all lumped together.
Weekly, in the size of a phone book.
Exactly. Yeah. So the trades that they send over here, they'll take everything for the month of the Shonen Jump magazine for one particular story, lump together, send in a book.
Kind of like they did the Walmart books.
Yes.
Kind
Where you
of,
basically get,
Yes.
you might get a new story, and then
Yes.
the rest of it's all reprints and stuff from.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So what you're looking at is the trade format of it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
but that's what I mean.
Oh.
But I feel like, but they have an easier time because there's not, like, Pluto hasn't been done by multiple writers, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like
I know
if
what
I'm
you're
looking at Captain America and I'm looking at the shelf, well, there's the Ta-Nehisi Coates take, and then there's the Mark Wade,
Yes, you're just
and they both have volume 1s and volume 2s, and I think that could be a little confusing
Sure.
for some people.
I mean,
and I don't know how to
yeah.
remedy that. I just like I said, I think there just comes a point where
There isn't.
at some
No.
level you got to just do the homework and like, okay,
Yeah.
It does happen in manga too,
Yeah.
but just
Right.
far, far less frequently, where you'll have a long running series that will reach its end and then they'll restart it and
With a
tell it a
different
slightly
frame.
different way.
Yeah.
It just is far, far less frequently than
Well-
it happens with the superhero comics.
Well, in manga too, they give their creators more control over the character as opposed to hiring a writer to do an already established character that's never ending. I think when the creator, I mean, not to say that they control it to an extent, because Shonen still has the rights to produce it, whether it's on somebody's jacket or in a video game or things of that nature. But when the creator wants to not do the story anymore, he'll wrap it up and be done with
Yeah.
it. It's rare when you see the material of their creation given over to another person to continue.
right.
Yeah. So if nothing else, the ones that are produced here are just out of greed that they don't want to shut the character down
Right.
at any point.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it'd
That's
be
a different
nice.
topic for another day, but we can talk
So-
about that.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there are, cool things and drawbacks to both of those as well. But so,
Yeah.
I mean, so are there any other drawbacks to the graphic novel coming out though?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Like
Yeah.
what?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my biggest thing was this is more along the lines of not so much as accessibility or the ability to just find them in different outlets. My biggest thing with the graphic novel is I think it just changed storytelling, like forever. Like I don't think they're ever going to go back to the simple idea of, you have every once in a while you have somebody who gets experimental and say, we're going to do a one and done, and then have a 5-part story.
Yeah.
Generally, it's like there's a 6-part story in every trade, whether it needs to be or not.
Well,
I agree with that. I feel like one and dones tend to happen in the annuals
Yeah.
a little bit more.
but
yeah.
one thing that I want to bring to attention is if it starts out in a comic, if somebody's waiting for the trade, the book may be canceled as opposed to everybody waiting for a trade to come out since the numbers aren't up. It'll put the kibosh on a great story early because everyone's waiting for the trade and the numbers of the
Yeah.
book itself drops. So it could kill the popularity or the nuance of a new idea, a great story developing, just because it's not producing numbers from
Yeah.
avid readers.
I mean, they're fine. I mean, I feel like the comics industry is just like plays that stuff really close to the chest. But I do think, I feel like in some cases, Marvel's actually been really good about that stuff.
Okay.
Or I've read interviews where they admit freely, like, Squirrel Girl's not selling month to month very well, but it's making a killing in trades, and that's why we keep doing it.
Yeah, sometimes if they're willing to give it a shot, sometimes they'll find out that it pays off.
Okay.
But that's probably a more recent adaptation on their part, because for a long time they were so resistant to anybody waiting for the trade. Like they would tell you, like, go buy the issues, go buy the issues, go buy the issues. But if it's not what the customer wants, then it's up to them to adapt. I feel like, which is probably another conversation possibly, but but no, I feel like it was around early 2000s when manga was first like invading America, I should say, like in the bookstores and everything, that Marvel, I can think of probably at that time more than DC, really did seem to start dictating story to fit a trade model. And they were the first ones, and that is the period of time I remember it happening. But now publishing, costs have changed, and Marvel trades are now down to 5 issues. So I don't know if they're now dictating 5-issue stories to match the new price model for what they want to put out.
Right, but for a while they also had the situation where not only were they, dictating what stories were supposed to be, but you would have that situation. We've talked about it before. The idea that you would have, like Marvel Now. Marvel Now is the thing we're doing, and we're going to have this lineup, and this is the lineup for X-Men, this lineup for Avengers. These are the people that, the teams that are on Spider-Man or Fantastic Four or whatever. And then we'd have 2 trades of those characters and those storylines, and then immediately revamp everything. And this is Marvel whatever now is.
Yeah.
And they would do the exact same thing again, where you get like
sometimes with the same writer, and I thought, and that's where I found it like really frustrating. Like, I mean, if when Mark Waid was still on Daredevil and Daredevil got relaunched, and there was no creative shift at all, and it was still very much like this story is picking up in the second volume, with this new number one, and I thought like this is so weird. Like I can understand like Brubaker's not writing Captain America anymore; someone else is on that. That makes sense to relaunch.
Yeah, Squirrel Girl had 2 number ones within 1 year of each other. Like Mighty Thor with Jason Aaron and Russell Dowderman was almost within a year of each other.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, they were within a year of each other because it was 8 issues and then the Thor's miniseries and then another number one. So just about a year apart.
Gotcha.
But the Squirrel Girl one actually happened 2 in the same calendar year.
I think they can get a little trigger happy with the number ones, but I think as far as like writing or writing to 6 issues, what always puzzles me about that is you can always go bigger, right? Like if you have a longer story, right, you can do 2 volumes of a trade, right? As long as you have enough story to fill 12 issues at that point. But it's funny that we're thinking in these like books of 6. Or now books of 5, essentially now. And some writers I think are better than others at it. Like, you know, it's just like anything else in writing. Like some guys are really good at dialogue. Some people are really good at action sequences. Some people are good with metaphor, all that stuff. Some people are good with pacing. And I think you have somebody with pacing, they'll tend to have like a better idea of like how much real estate their story is going to take up.
Sure.
And kind of be a better self-editor of what goes in and what goes out. But I've never understood why we don't get more trades like The Man Who Laughs, the Brubaker Joker thing. Like that's an interesting trade for me because like that actual Man Who Laughs story is like only 2 issues. And then, but in the trade you get like the book is hung up on that story. Like that's the main event story. If I'm looking at it like a wrestling card, like that's the main event story. That's the one that's selling it. But then the back half of that is 4 issues of like this Alan Scott, like Commissioner Gordon thing in Gotham. Then like also done by Brubaker, so there's cohesion there.
Right.
You know.
Are you talking about the Legend of the Dark Knight story? That one he did, or the one that was like the one shots that he did?
No, it wasn't one shots. I think this is when he was still on Batman proper.
Okay.
This is after like Gordon was not the commissioner anymore, like after he'd been shot and stuff like that. And, yeah, so it was very much a Gordon story, but like Alan Scott was a part of it.
So it's after Officer Down then?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I just think it's one of those things where I just think a lot of times it becomes a situation where you're given so much real estate and you just don't know how to fill it in. And the stories go an extra issue. Or a prime example for me was Original Sin, the Jason Aaron miniseries about, you know, the Watcher and, you know, all the revealed secrets and all that stuff. There's literally, I mean, the way I remember reading it, there was an issue like around, I think it's like 3 to 4 or 4 to 5. That's practically the same issue. Yeah. One right after the other.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty much the exact same story. And I don't blame Jason Aaron because I think Jason is a very good writer. I just think it's one of those things where it could have, I mean, I almost yearn for the days of when miniseries were 4 issues.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I mean, in some hands it's better, in other hands it's not. Like I feel like I bring him up every podcast, but I swear, like Bendis is the king of that.
Oh yeah, well,
right. We're like when I was reading his X-Men stuff, and it was like occasionally there was an issue that had like a whole lot going on, and then I felt like I would read 3 issues of the same thing that was the same conversation. Like they need to go back, and then I'm like, okay, stop saying that. I get for somebody new picking up the book that this may be their first issue of that they're reading. Okay, that makes sense, right? But they've started doing like those previously on the X-Men pages in the beginning, which almost takes the place of the editor's note. Right,
exactly. So that became big in the early 2000s.
Yeah, that was Ultimate. Yeah, that's my point. Is like a lot of times it was one of those. A lot of times you would have the situation where that front piece, that page, would basically give you a synopsis of what happened in the book, and then you would turn the pages, and the first 3 to 4 pages were basically the characters telling you what had happened previously in the book, which didn't make any sense because why include those pages in the front at all?
Yeah. It's like you're restating like the whole thesis of the book. Like and I'm just like, this is a waste of time,
yes.
I think. And sometimes Bendis is great at that. Bendis is fantastic at writing like the conversational issue that like this whole issue's one scene. And sometimes that's wonderful to read. And other times it's just like, all right, can we move this along? Like I'm on the 4th trade and nothing's happened.
But I will say someone when I think about someone who's really good at filling the trade, regardless of the way he is now, I think Chuck Dixon did a really good job of filling 6 issues with story. Like there would be there'd be the setup in the first issue. Yeah, about 3 to 4 issues of actual stuff happening, and then the last issue generally was the coda piece where it was like, like if you think about the one you and I both love, the one where it's Robin and Nightwing on the train, in Bloodhaven talking, which is a tremendous issue, and it's after, I can't remember what event it's after, but it's one of those things where it's a lot of stuff has happened right before it,
right?
It's one of the big Batman crossovers, and it's just the two of them talking at the end of it, and I think it works really well. And I think a lot of people don't really think about structure of story and 6 issues. Like, I think they think, well, I'll just, I'll stick the landing at the last second and hope this all comes together. And I don't think you can treat your every issue, there has to be, you have to look at the entirety of what you're given. If you're given, I don't know, what's a standard comic book page wise?
22 pages.
22 pages. Yeah. So for 6 issues, it's what? 132 pages, right? Yeah. So you're looking at 132 pages that you have to fill.
Right.
So basically you have to, I would think you would have to, unless you're given an extra, it's like an anniversary issue at the end or an anniversary issue at the beginning to kick things off. You got to think about your page count. And I think it's one of those things where we've had this conversation before, the idea that British writers, for whatever reason, and I think it's basically the theory that I have, is that when you start out in British magazine, in British comics over there, you have 8 pages to tell your story, right? So you're used to working with 8 pages as your real estate, and there's not a lot more, not a lot of room for fluff.
Right.
You really can't, you couldn't give 8 pages of art to people in Britain. They'd be like, what is the story? It's nothing here. It's but I think about all the books that I read where in order to fill a trade paperback, it was just, a fight scene or a double page splash when you didn't need one. And granted that some of that's just due to artists wanting to resell their art.
Right.
But a lot of it also is the idea of, from a writing, someone had to write that scene.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that people value the space that they're given enough to say, well, do I have enough story to fill up 132 pages of a trade?
Right. Yeah. No, I had an epiphany while you were talking. Like, because I was thinking about, I'm like, where did, thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Frank.
No problem.
No, I was thinking about like, where did I get that idea that like, why can't trades be broken up with more, like this is a 3 issue and then this is a 2 issue story and this is a 1 issue. And like, no, you're right. It was Dixon. It was Dixon that whole time. I really did not put 2 and 2 together on that, but yeah, he's good at it. He was great at that in the 90s when he was like on all the Batman stuff, like especially Nightwing. Yes. Like Nightwing was the one where I read the most consistently out of all that. But yeah, you would get like, this is 3 issues of Nightwing where he's in Blackgate trying to, win it back after the earthquake thing. And then, and then we have 2 issues where he's with Oracle, and they're trying to breach like her, loft, her lair, whatever it was. Right. Yeah. No, he was really good at that. But again, I don't know why more people don't think that way.
I don't know. I don't know if it's an editorial mandate or just the idea that like, they sit down and like, oh man, I got to fill these 6 issues. And if I don't fill these 6 issues, I don't have a story. And I'm like, no, you have a story. You just don't have to take, sometimes you could tell it in 2 issues better and then fill the other 4 issues with something else.
I wonder if it's just easier to think about, like, I'm thinking about like the toys I can play with in that time. And if I'm thinking in 6 issues, right? Like, all right, I'm going to do my Joker story in 6 issues, right? No, I'm just going to think about that because everybody's got the joke that we make all the time is everybody's got their Joker story, everybody's got their Dark Phoenix story, and everything. Many people have their Mad Hatter story, right? But that was the thing about Dixon is he would have those, like he would have ideas for those other characters. And I wonder if it's just like a lack of ideas that's kind of like I don't know what to do with the Riddler. Like I don't have a Riddler story, so I'm not going to try and do that in 2 issues. I'm going to just try and stretch this Two-Face thing out for...
Well, Two-Face story should always be 2 issues.
It should always be 2 issues, right. Should always be divisible by 2. Always even numbers.
Always even numbers. Always. There's a reason for it. It's built into the character. But, yeah, I agree with you. That makes a lot of sense. The idea that, But again, it's one of the things where when miniseries first started, the majority of them were 4 issues, right?
Yeah.
And we had, there are examples of 4-issue graphic novels. They exist. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, again, I would think with paper costs and what it costs to print books now, I would think, why wouldn't you want to go with a model with something that you might sell more of that cost you less than just to basically do something more of with the issues wise or page count, where it may not be, you may not get the same bang for your buck, so to speak.
Right.
And then we haven't talked about the fact that digital, I mean, I think I told Tommy this. There was the first collection of all the Crisis crossover stuff, all the single issues or two issues that went. It was like a $60 or $70 book or something ridiculous when it first came out, or maybe it was less than that. Maybe it was like closer to 40 or 40, 50. But it came out one week on a Wednesday. By the next Wednesday, it was on sale on Comixology for $4.
Right. Yeah.
And it's one of those things of, I know if I were DC, I'd be kind of, I mean, granted, I don't know what the deal they have with Comixology, whether they have a say-so in what goes on sale or they don't.
I have to imagine they do have some say.
Sure, I would think.
I don't know the mechanics.
I have
of
a
it.
theory about this, though.
Okay,
but finish your thought first.
But no, just the thought that, I mean, it's a tough sale for people that didn't, not. I mean, there are people that love Crisis, people that hate it. There are people that are indifferent to it, they don't really. It doesn't affect them because those characters don't exist in those forms anyway anymore. So they don't really, I mean, sure there might be some more interest with the CW stuff going on, and they just put out like a $500 box set. With like a million things in it. I think it starts with Flash 123 collected in hardcovers and then all the way up through Crisis. But it's one of those things where, I would be from DC's standpoint, I couldn't imagine putting out a $40 book one week and the next week it's $5 on Comixology, because why wouldn't you just, I mean, granted, unless you really want that book, why would you not pay $5 to get it?
Right. But so my theory about that is that I believe that possibly that they are very much aware that people will prefer paper for the most part over digital, right? And so they think that for the most part that these older books like Crisis and whatever, Long Halloween and stuff like that for the most part the people on digital buying that are rebuying it.
Sure.
Right?
Oh, sure.
And right, because I want that. Mm-hmm. I want Long Halloween and Dark Victory on my tablet for when I'm flying wherever I can have it, but I'm not going to buy it if it's the same price as the actual trade itself. No, I agree. Right? I'm not going to buy it a second time that way. But if you lower it to $5 and I catch it on Black Friday or whatever, I'm far more likely to okay, yeah, I'll rebuy it.
Right.
I like it that much.
Or you can subscribe to DC Universe for 1 month for $7 and read it there whenever you want. It's $7 a time.
For as long as that lasts.
Yeah. Hopefully it's around. But I need to get. I do enjoy it.
But I need to get on the Wi-Fi on the plane that way, and I sometimes don't always do that.
No,
that costs
I think
money.
You can download.
Can you
download stuff? Yeah, from the app. I've never tried. Like downloading to Netflix, temporarily, and just access it through their app.
Okay.
I'm not positive about that. But I'll have to double check that.
Okay. You probably can prep it before you leave. That's what I do with Netflix.
I feel like I never get the full benefit of any piece of technology that comes out. I feel like I never use it to the fullest always.
No, but it's almost like you need another tangent. It's almost like you need a guide in order to understand fully to appreciate something, not just the nuances of it. So I feel you on that one. It wasn't until somebody made it to my attention that I could even do the Netflix option. Yeah. Before I was like, I'm not watching. I just wait till I get into the house. But when you find that option that you can do it, then you know.
Disney Plus. You can download on Disney Plus too.
Okay. Good to know.
And watch on the go without Wi-Fi.
Wow.
But going back to the DC sales on Comixology, there was the time, and I don't know if they're still happening, I've just kind of lost track, where Marvel would have those blockbuster sales on Amazon for digital stuff. And they'd come out of nowhere and last for a week, and it would be stuff that's normally $40 books, $30 books that would all of a sudden digital would all of a sudden be $388 or something like that. Oh yeah. And I used to get alerts for when those sales would happen, and I just wait for them and then stock up on a bunch and then not buy stuff other times, because why would you if you knew these sales were coming? And then it would be so much there's so much stuff.
Wow.
Well, I would say this, when it comes to the stuff that goes on sale, Marvel is far, especially, I can't say it everywhere, but again, I can say from Amazon and from Comixology for sure, that between those two, you can do really, like you said, those sales are really, you get a lot of really good stuff for really cheap. And DC, I don't know why, but they don't really take advantage of the digital. And they may do, they may because of the app. They want, they might be doing more of it, trying to get people to do it that way.
But Marvel has that as well. They have the Marvel Unlimited. It's like $6 a month and access to almost the whole back catalog up until 6 months ago.
Gotcha. But yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I would clean up with those Comixology or Amazon sales, because for a while, especially when Amazon and Comixology got together and you could use your, they were pretty much anything that was on.
Link the two accounts.
Anything that was on Amazon, you could get through Comixology. You wouldn't have to go the extra step to go to Amazon.
All right, but let me stop you right there, Frank, because ultimately, if someone doesn't have a tablet, the whole thing of accessing it through those servers that Clifton was saying would be irrelevant. Me personally, I enjoy the tangibility of the story itself in my hand. So as a result of it, I wouldn't agree with you based upon what you're trying to entail.
I mean, I get what you're saying. And my other thing that we hadn't gotten around to is the idea, and it actually applies to all of us here, is the idea that very rarely do we, unless it's something that hasn't been traded, we don't hand each other issues. Like, if it's the only way to give someone a story, but like, I'm thinking about like with the holidays coming up and Christmas, very rarely does any of you at this table hand me single issues. Now, last year I got you that Batman story.
You did. That's right.
The issues.
The one that's not traded.
The one that's not traded.
The Talia story that's not traded. That's right.
Wow.
I had to get you that Talia story because I read it off Comixology, for, I think it was, again, they had a sale. It was $1 a book. And it's Talia and Catwoman and Robin and Raish and
it sounded like, I remember it sounded like a Bond story.
Yes, it pretty much is.
Just like you were saying earlier, not everything's traded, and that's one of the downsides of it. But another aspect that I think is the interruption of a long story. Like, imagine you get into X-Men, and there's certain stories that you don't come across, but certain trades are built upon like the length of the run of the writer, correct? Mm-hmm. Like volume 1, volume 2, volume 3 of the writer. Let's say somebody puts you on volume 3, and that preview part explains what happened beforehand. Why would you go back and read it when you got a synopsis of the story going into it based upon the trade that you just picked up? I mean, it almost cuts off your need to watch or read earlier issues based upon the trade that you received.
It can be, but I think it's that's the other aspect of comics that's great, is the fact that you're getting storytelling through what the script was, but visually it might be, the visual storytelling is going to be different than what the script
the written word is.
As well as the fact is, they also, for a while there, they'll put together artist editions, or they'll put together, like there's a run of Fantastic Four, for example, that's all Byrne. And obviously Byrne wrote that stuff, but Byrne did the art as well.
Yeah.
But there's also George Perez Fantastic Four collections that are just his work on Fantastic Four.
Okay.
As well as like there's a George Perez, a couple volumes of George Perez Justice League. Because again, he was supposed to, at one point he had Justice League, was going to do Justice League, and they're like, how about New Teen Titans?
Ooh,
and he decided to do that instead.
Yeah, thank God.
There's only a handful of issues and stuff that he did for Justice League.
Okay.
So you might want to go back and get it just for the art, or, to see the stuff that it's.
Splash.
Well, I mean, another example is when I bought the Epic collection of Power Man and Iron Fist, because of the rights being tied up for Rom Space Knight, there's an issue where because he was a toy and then Marvel doesn't own those rights anymore.
That's just ridiculous, but go ahead.
So there's an issue of Power Man and Iron Fist, like around 77, 78, where it has the issue in the trade, it has the issue, and then a one-page synopsis of what happens in the issue with Rom, and then the next issue that takes place after, because they can't reprint that issue.
Wow.
Yes, that's how they get around it.
Smooth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Well, I mean, I guess they don't want. I guess they don't want to print the issue with him blocked out, or a stick figure or something to represent, the character. But there's a fair. I mean, that's just one example. There's a fair amount of stuff that's in there that's that Rom was in. Like he met a ton of Marvel characters throughout his run.
Yeah, he did.
So
before they lost the Micronauts rights.
True, same thing. So unless it was a character that they created for that book that wasn't already a Micronaut toy,
Right.
Yeah, then they were able to keep it. That's like, well, in the early revamped of the Guardian stuff, you had Bug as part of that group. Like with Groot and Rocket, and
I know that.
Yeah, he's in like some of those issues, or like one of the couple of miniseries or something. With I think it's Abnett Landing, but I'm not sure.
But Tommy, you got me thinking about, like, you were saying how the trade is like a finite amount of space, and like maybe we need an industry person here, or somebody from Diamond or something like that. But I don't know where, like, why we didn't like. why aren't there just more expensive trades made with 8 issues?
Yeah.
Or less expensive trades
Maybe with like 4
with
issues.
3.
Yeah, because it's kind of, well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, 'cause it's kind of like it's either 6 issues or now 5 issues or an omnibus.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no ground
it's like
in between.
volumes of 6.
Unless you have a 12,
Unless it's a 12 issue.
like Watchmen or
thing where-
Crisis or something like that.
Limited
But
series.
usually that comes out in 2 trades first, and then you get
True.
right.
Well, they started
like I just texted you, Frank, about this where Wade and Samney's Black Widow is getting now finally
The Ultimate Collection.
like
Probably
the
because of the
deluxe
movie.
that's like whatever it is, 10 issues or 11
Skip
issues.
the
however long it
hardcover.
is.
I wanted that one in the big oversized hardcover.
Yeah.
They usually go from like 2 volume trades to 1 oversized hardcover, then to that hardcover and paperback. And I was waiting for that one because
Right.
it's beautiful.
Mhm.
And they skipped the hardcover and went straight to the Ultimate Collection paperback.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, there's a few others. Like the Tom King stuff has been going straight to oversized trades, sort of 12 issue trades. Like the Tom King Mr. Miracle book I can think of. And yeah, that just went straight to 12 issues, right? Is that how long the run is? There's
Yeah, it's
10
12
issues.
Is it 12? I thought.
No, it's 12.
I know it's more than 6.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it went straight to a collection of all of them.
No, but I feel like they publish. I feel like they publish a lot of his work anyway. Certain people are just prolific that anything they touch it right is going to hit trade.
Once you get
status.
to the rock star status,
Mhm.
which she got to.
He definitely got to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, talking about like Marvel always sticking, or DC always sticking with the 6 issue model. I feel like that was a publisher side thing, basically for what they saw as consumer expectations. So you've got these books coming out, they're volume 1, they're volume 2 eventually, volume 3 eventually, that their plan is that they want you to buy all of them.
Sure.
So they don't want to change, like if you're expecting this is my price point for 1, they don't want to give you more issues and then the price jumps $8 or $6 or whatever. So that's why I think they're sticking at 6, so that it is a comic issue comes out at the same price every month. I think they wanted a trade paperback to come out at the same price every 6 months.
Is there? I mean, Clifton, you're better at like sort of like the business side of things than I am. So, but is there like a contractual component to this? Do you think like when a writer and artist team jumps on a character, like is it the fact that usually you're contracted for 12 issues? Like I'm going to do it for a year. I'm going to do it for 2 years. Like I'm thinking Dharma Cook on Spirit.
Oh no, I'm sure.
You know?
I'm sure once they started taking that model, that the contracts followed suit, and that they realized, because I mean, fill-in issues just didn't fly anymore, and that's what used to be in the everything leading up to the early 2000s. There were fill-in issues everywhere, and they were fine because your stories weren't set in stone arcs. And then after that, when they needed a set in stone arc to make a trade out of, I'm sure their contracts were like, you're doing 6, you're doing 12, you're doing something divisible by 6.
My heart just broke a minute ago because I didn't realize how much I missed the fill-in issues until you said. I'm like, oh man, sometimes there's nothing like a good fill-in issue.
Right.
Sure. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right?
And then the fill-in issues were good because you would get a book out on time. So your main your all-star creators would be falling a little behind because it takes time to make good work. And so they had those fill-in issues that would just throw one out, books on schedule, audience keeps their book. Got something to read, and then you're back to the A team after that. And then they decided there just wasn't an appetite for fill-ins. Like the artist writers became the rock stars, and that's the only act you're there for. You're not there for
the cover band.
You're not there for the opening act to play in the middle of a show.
The deception about it is what got me. I'm with you about it because there are some times where a fill-in issue would be a huge drag, but that was the time when you would accidentally buy the issue, thinking that I was getting Morrison, and then I'm like, wait a minute. You kept the
Keith Morrison.
Yeah, you kept the cover I'm thinking back to the black and white Batman covers again. Remember, they kept those covers for those years, no matter who was on the book.
Right.
I'm like, oh, okay. Wait a minute. This isn't Dini,
right?
Something else.
I accidentally bought this.
Well, sometimes they would put they'd accidentally quote unquote lead the creative team from the regular creative team and be like, oh, it's not a person it's someone's brother-in-law that's writing this book for the month. Great.
Right. It was also a place they would try out a lot of new talent.
True.
And that is a big loss, I think, from when they shifted away from them, is that they didn't have a place to give people a shot that wasn't as consequential as giving them a miniseries or a new book. They could just be like, give these a shot for this one time. If it works, it works.
That's why they need to bring back the showcase for much cheaper.
Yeah.
That's when we got those new artists that were like knockoffs of the main artists.
Yeah, of course.
Like the Alan Davis who's the Alan Davis knockoff that got there?
Wasn't there
It's
two
Davis
guys
record.
named Moore that were writing like top 10 though? Was it like didn't somebody
There was
take over after Alan Moore?
Well, and there was Steve Moore.
Steve Moore
Steve
works
Moore?
with
Okay,
Alan Moore a lot.
okay, but that was my point. So that was mine where I'm like, oh.
Well, there was a
wait
Kirby. There was a
minute.
guy. There was a Kirby guy that also was for a while too, where you're like Kirby on the book, and I'm
Right.
like, that's not just change your
Yeah,
name.
that's not fair.
Don't do
You
that.
guys are jerks.
Yeah, right.
You guys are jerks.
Don't
Steve
do
Moore
that.
is friends with Alan Moore.
Yes, they've been friends for like ever, like from his early days of like fanzine type stuff. But yeah, I agree with you. Steve
Yeah.
Moore was doing a lot of the ABC stuff when Alan Moore was stepped away. So yeah, that was a thing that happened. But
Yeah. All right. So I guess to wrap up before we sign off, is there does everybody have like one story that was never traded that we want to see traded that like we would snatch up first day
sure,
upon release? Let me
yeah,
finish my
absolutely.
sentence.
It's not just first day, sure,
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, for me, it was one of those things where for the longest time I had, a lot of times when I go to shows, when I'm looking around in dollar boxes, I'll look for like Marvel Team Up or Marvel 2-in-1, DC Comics Presents or Brave and the Bold, any kind of team up stuff. And there's a issues, I think it's 82 through 85 of Marvel Team Up. It's Spider-Man and Black Widow. And then as the story gets, further along in this 4-parter, again, it's Spider-Man and Black Widow in the first issue. It's Spider-Man, Black Widow, and Nick Fury in the second issue. Spider-Man, and then it's Spider-Man and Shang-Chi, and then all 4 of them in the final part. So it's basically, it was for the longest time. It's not, I just found out yesterday that they're doing a Black Widow team-ups in a trade, to get stuff ready for the movie drops. So it's in that one. And
What year around was this one that you're talking about?
early 80s. It's pretty
Okay.
old at this point. It's
Yeah,
probably
'cause I've never heard of it. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's like 82, but it's a story where in the first issue that I was able to read, I'm pretty sure it looks like Nick Fury like took a shot at Black Widow, and that's where the story starts with Spider-Man in the middle of all this.
Sounds great.
It's got Boomerang and Silver Samurai as the villains. So
Boomerang.
yeah, it's pretty. It's
Nick
it's,
Spencer has made me love Boomerang.
but it's also one of those things of like when I think about the fact that we have a Shang-Chi and a Black Widow movie, and we already have Nick Fury and Spider-Man established in Far From Home.
Mhm.
That basically I'm not saying that I think we're going to get that at some point,
Right.
but it'd be amazing if we got that at some
Yeah.
point.
That would be awesome. That would be cool.
So, and then the other one,
Disney's got to buy Spider-Man for that, I think.
Sure.
Right?
but I mean,
They have
Or TV show.
They have TV rights for Spider-Man.
Yeah, a big TV show.
and then my honorable mention would be getting back to what we talked about with DC saying, hey, we're going to put this out, and then basically taking it back to being Lucy with the football and taking it away at the last second was they had announced the 5-year gap for the Legion.
Ooh.
Oh, really?
It was supposed to be on a hardcover, and then
Who was that? Who was the writer on that?
it's Giffen, right? Is
Giffen?
it
Okay.
Giffen?
It's Giffen.
Yeah,
Giffen
Giffen did
and,
the art for sure, and then it's who's the writer on that? Is it Giffen too? No, it's
For a
not.
minute, then it turned to Tom
Tom
and Mary.
Beerbaum.
Mhm.
But yeah, they've never really traded out that stuff. So it's one of those things where if you wanted to read it, you read it digitally, I think, but you can't really, or pick up the issues. But to read the whole thing, you have to, there's not been a trade or a hardcover. And then the same thing, it was announced, and then DC decided not to do it. So
Okay.
I'd like to see that.
I love the 5-year gap.
Yeah, so do I.
You got one, Tommy? You want to go next?
Unfortunately, I don't have anything that comes to mind that I was desperately looking for. I usually end up going for the single issues or borrowing it from somebody. But I've had difficulty locating Solo.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's a hardcover for like $60 or $50, but it's never been a softcover trade. Unfortunately, for the issues that came, that's the only format it came in. So harken back to our earlier episode. I effing can't find that bastard.
My greatest regret was I saw that at a convention half off.
The big hardcover.
Maybe
The
5
hardcover.
years ago.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
you're like,
I was just being stupid. I was like, maybe I'll come back to it. I forgot about it over the course of the day. Didn't pick it up. Biggest regret. Biggest Comic-Con regret, I think, was that one.
Yeah, but that's
Bring that book back, DC.
Yes.
Come
Yes.
on.
How do you not do that now? In this day
Good
and age?
grief. There's so many guys.
Yeah.
Babs Tarr.
Yes.
Give like Babs Tarr doing one. That'd be so great.
Yeah.
But what's nuts
Cam
is
Stewart.
Yeah.
But what's nuts is the simple notion that you got it like those people are gonna live forever. That's what I see it as. That's just legends in the game haven't done anything of that nature. And yes, some people retire, from burnout.
Yeah.
Like certain fan favorites you would love to see them do that.
Sure.
And hopefully it'll rekindle their love of it. One that brings to mind is Joe Madiera, whatever his name is.
Oh, Joe Mad?
Yes, yes. I would love to see a rendition on certain characters.
I just laugh because I have a buddy who is like just tangentially like in the comics. Like he's into that stuff, but he doesn't really buy comics anymore. But every time I see him, still like what's up with Battle Chasers?
Yeah.
Still waiting since 1998.
That's like my friend who's like, hey, what about Divine Right? I'm like, Divine Right? What are you talking about? Yeah. I mean, Jim Lee still does comics every once in a while, but Divine Right, are you sure?
Yeah. Oh.
Wow, so he's the guy that was buying that.
Yes,
okay.
Man.
Kept it alive.
Divine Right.
Divine Right. Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Deep pull, Frank.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Nice. But yeah, that's my pull.
Okay.
Clifton,
you're up.
All right. One I can think of that I always wanted in trade was the 6-issue question series from 2004. Written by Rick Veitch, art by Tommy Lee Edwards.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever been put out in trade. We think it might be a casualty of their recent soliciting and unsoliciting books.
I thought it had to do with the fact that there was a controversy about the guy, Micah Ian Wright, who was the writer. That he had basically at one point, he was writing Stormwatch and he was supposed to be supposed to write a Vigilante mini around that site. It's all about the Science Spire stuff.
Right.
It's around the same time as the question. And then it came out, someone exposed him on the internet. He'd said that he was actually in the military. I mean, this is all hearsay.
This is recent?
Yeah, this is years ago.
I do remember this controversy.
But this was. I mean, I don't know for sure. I don't know my facts right. This is all alleged. I don't know for sure. But that was what the rumor was at the time, was because he had basically said that he was in the armed services, and then people called him on it, and then found out that he wasn't. He got fired off of Stormwatch.
Okay.
As well as the Vigilante series never came out.
No, this sounds vaguely familiar, but Clifton, I feel like that this was solicited like as recent as last year.
Oh, was it really?
I think,
okay.
yeah, I think Clifton, you're right.
I mean, it's a fantastic.
It was pulled away from us.
It's not out. It is available in digital and on DC Universe. Which, answering a question from before, you can download books and take them with you before your travels.
Okay.
On DC Universe app. Because that's where I looked it up to see if they have it.
I might have to do that then.
But that one, it's a fun book. It's Question in Metropolis. Mm-hmm. So he's interacting with Superman, sort of.
Right.
Yeah.
But they never... It's an interesting depiction of Superman and Question's point of view on Superman.
Okay. Mine, kind of a cheat because I sort of got mine. So Batman and Robin Adventures was the Ty Templeton Batman animated series book that was being done in the 90s. That was my favorite iteration of Batman for the longest time. But those ended up getting traded completely. But down the road, it became rebranded again. Like after they did Gotham Adventures, it became Batman Adventures Volume 2. And it was kind of treated like animated series season 5. And that was, was that Dan Slott, Frank? Because you've been talking this one up for me for a long time.
Yeah,
I thought it was Slott, right? Slott and Templeton.
Slott and Templeton are both either writing together or switching off issue to issue.
Yeah, and so, but in there, because we never saw them on the show, at least not in Batman, but it introduced Black Mask and Deadshot and stuff like that. And so I was hoping that when we got, because they had done a few Gotham Adventures trades, I was like, okay, a few more, and we're eventually going to get to this. And then I think DC pulled the rug out from under it. And I'm like, so...
Well, I mean, the thing about the other thing is those original issues have a pretty good, there's a pretty great cliffhanger, and they never resolve it because the book doesn't go on. So, yeah, it's a fantastic...
Why do they do that? Just do one more.
Yeah,
one more issue.
Sure. I would love to see what the resolution was for that. I mean, I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't read it, but it's pretty great if you like...
No, I still haven't read it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, no, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's pretty great, but it's one of those things where, it's one of those definitely unresolved storylines in comics I'd love to see finish up.
Cool.
But, yeah.
All right. So that's the graphic novel. The verdict is, as always, it depends.
Yes.
So with that, I'm Zach Slater.
I'm Frank Melman.
Tommy Smithereens.
Left in.
All right. We're signing off. Thanks for listening.